Blessed art thou, O Christ, our God, who is with you, the fisherman is most wise. By sending down upon them the Holy Spirit, who then guides throughout the world into thy net, O lover of them, glory to thee.
Amen.
Bless you.
We have some business cards out, so here's some business cards for you. I will have to say that the email on that is misspelled. Orthodox has 3 O's instead of 2, so that's the only thing that's incorrect on it. So, Orthodox Africa is a 501c3 that's based here in Virginia, and we have 5 board members as well as 40 volunteers at the current time. So we work with missions over in Africa that are Orthodox, and I'm excited to be able to go over there for 6 weeks. Here, a week from tomorrow, I'll be leaving and be back the late July. And it's in order for us to be able to go over and see the work that's being done, and if we can help support them in some project, whether it's an orphanage, a school, or something that's going to benefit the area. And so here in just a bit, Father Methodius will be telling about the real differences being made by our donors. And so we've had some very sizable gains here in the last just few months. And so it's exciting to see. And my involvement is the Assistant Director of Orthodox Africa. And you know our Executive Director, he's been a part of here, Father Solon. And so it's exciting to see the vision come to fruition, and also to be able to be a part of it. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Father Methodius.
How long ago did you organize yourself?
We'll go ahead and allow him to answer the questions, because he's our representative from Africa, and I'll be here to assist in case there's a question that we can't answer. So yeah, it's a good question though. So Father Methodius.
We say good evening or good afternoon?
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Father Methodius from Kenya, and at the same time I'm the Director of Orthodox Africa. So I'm representing not only the mission that I'm Director at, but I'm representing other missions also back there in Kenya. And I do not know where to start, because there are so many things that Orthodox Africa is doing in Africa, specifically in Kenya and Uganda, that is East Africa. But possibly I will start by telling you that difference is being made on the ground by the donors who are donating towards this mission. Possibly I would say that currently we have had Orthodox Africa help purchase a van for the Diocese of Kisumu, which is yet to be completed, the payment. Orthodox Africa has helped purchase land to plant tea for St. Innocent's Academy in the Diocese of Kisumu. Orthodox Africa has helped purchase land for my mission, that is St. Barnabas Orthodox Orphanage and School in the Diocese of Nairobi, where Archbishop Macarius is the bishop. We have Orthodox Africa has helped purchase land for St. Irene Orthodox Mission, which is a school, and it is in the Diocese of Nairobi. Orthodox Africa has helped us raise funds for a well at St. Barnabas, which has been already dug. It is 260 meters deep, because we don't have clean water in Kenya, and we are looking forward to getting assistance to install a pump, pipes, and all this. St. Irene also is looking forward to receiving assistance to drill a well at their mission. And we have several other missions, like 10 lining up, waiting for assistance. Nevertheless, I would like to bring to your attention that despite the fact that we are receiving help from our brothers in America and other places, we are also making an effort to ensure that we raise funds locally. So we get friends, I go around, get friends who can assist these missions, and we get a little locally, and then we get more from abroad. Our main focus is to build missions that will become self reliant and self-sustaining, such that even if the West doesn't send any help, we can continue evangelizing our nation. So that's the little I can say for now, possibly, unless you have questions, and then I can know the direction of the discussion.
And I was asking people on the American part.
Oh, okay.
When did that start?
Okay. The 501c3 was formed here just, it was officially formed in 2015.
Like 2 years ago.
3 years ago.
Yes, 3. I guess we're 18. And why?
It was to be able to help missions over in Africa because of the great need over there. And a lot of the times we didn't know who were legitimate missions and who were just pleading for money. Because you can send money over there and it could be to somebody that's posing to be a mission and they weren't. And Father can speak of this.
Yeah, sure. Some years back, like in 2014, I met Father Siloan on Facebook. I actually was introduced by a lady who was handicapped, and she was my friend on Facebook, and we used to pray for each other. Her mom was very sick, and so she came to learn about my mission, and so she introduced me to Father Siloan, and Father Siloan was like, okay, I would like to help, but I'm a monk and I don't have money, so how do I help? And then we prayed, and then I told him our main problem is that people don't know us. People don't know that there is Orthodox Church in Kenya. People don't know whether we are just a scam from Africa. So possibly you could go around in America and tell people that we are real and we exist. And then he was like, that is not possible. You cannot go around America telling people that. So after some time, he came with the idea that he could start a website and place our content there, and then people can read online about us. And then after he did that, I told him, we are making a mistake, Father, because you have not come and seen what we are doing. And if people ask you, what is this that you have put on the website? You just took it from an online thing and you don't know it. So you have to make an effort and come to Africa. See, feel, smell, and touch. And then you can tell people. So Father organized himself and flew to Africa. I met him at the airport. I took him around and showed him all the missions, and then he stayed with us for like 6 weeks, and he was able to see what we were doing, and then he got the confidence to tell people about it, and he went ahead and got friends, got people, supporters and volunteers, and they registered this 501c3. So that's how, basically how Orthodox Africa started. Yes, please.
So the tea is to help to sustain one of the missions, the tea growing?
Yeah, the tea brewing is to sustain one of the missions. If they have orphans and they have all these kids, and the area is very poor, but
an orphanage.
they have good, yeah, it's an orphanage, and they have good soil. They didn't own land; they were renting a place for the orphanage. So Orthodox Africa brought in that money through the diocese, and they bought 2 acres of land, and they are planting tea. So in the future, they will not be asking for money because they will just sell tea and get to pay the workers and support the orphans.
And are there other projects like that you said you hope to be self-sustaining? Do you have other ideas for how?
Yeah, we have, all the missions have ideas. For example, the mission that I'm heading, St. Barnabas, we have the idea of selling education to the local people, because education is a thing that is on high demand. And people in Kenya like very much to take children to private schools. Unfortunately,
they have money for that?
there is a very big group that is very poor, and there is a group that is super rich, and there is another one that is middle class. So this middle class, they live in the cities and towns, and so they like to take their children to the countryside for education, where there are no drugs and all this other stuff. So because we are in the countryside, we want to build a state-of-the-art academy and then make advertisements to those people, and then they can bring the children to our school, and we charge them a tuition fee and all this, and we get money to run our orphanage. So we are looking for, actually we are looking for money. One, we are looking for money to keep these children, give them education, give them food, give them clothing, healthcare, and more important, we are looking for money to build on this new property, to build a very nice school where these orphans will be getting their education, and we bring on board others who will be paying tuition, so it becomes an orphanage and school. Currently we are running it as a school where orphans are also staying there. So we have friends of the orphanage who have brought their children, and they are paying a little amount because the school is not very good. But if we make it look nice and be a good place, then we can increase the fees, and then you get the money. Saint Irene is also doing the same, and we have another Saint George. We have another Saint Nicholas. We have several missions that want to do the same, because for us to be self-sustaining, we have to be selling either a product or a service that is affordable to the local people. So we kind of generate income locally. Because I don't think you are getting money from Russia or from South America or from wherever. You are getting resources from within. So we also need to sell the service to our people and then do the evangelism. For example, at St. Barnabas, we have already baptized 64 of the children there. We have 175. 64 have converted to Orthodox, and if they are living with a guardian, if they are living with a grandparent, because most of them are orphans, we ask for a permission from that person to baptize them, and they have been given permission, and we have baptized 64 children. So these are Orthodox. They are being catechized more and giving more education to them to become strong Orthodox. Already we have 6 children in secular school, and they are good. They are teaching others about Orthodoxy. So the church will come out of that institution, develop a generation of Orthodox people in this area.
So Father, tell about how the funding would be for the orphans.
How?
Yeah. How their tuition will be paid for the orphans.
Okay. What we are intending to do is for every 2 paying students, we get 1 orphan sponsored. That is locally. After we build the school, we will ensure that the fee that we charge for every 2 paying students, we get an orphan to be sponsored, because that is very possible.
Excuse me, you live in the countryside, right?
Yes.
What is the language that you speak there?
Okay, in Kenya we mostly have, most of the people, they will have 3 languages. They will have a local dialect, and then they will have Kiswahili, which is a national language, and English, which is also a national language. So in the countryside, we speak those 3 languages.
So that's if they are educated. If they are not educated, they won't speak English, right?
Yeah, if they are not educated, they will speak a local dialect and Kiswahili.
What is the dialect?
For example, my dialect is Kikuyu. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Where do you find most of your converts coming from? A particular previous denomination or a tribe? Like the Luo or Kikuyu? Or?
Yeah, it is. People convert from other denominations because Kenya is a Christian country. Most people are Christian, but Orthodox in Kenya is a minority among the minority. So we get converts. Even these children, they had some other faith. They were going to some other denomination. So, but when they come to us, they are there in the services, they listen to what we are teaching and they like it, and they ask, please Father, can I get baptized so that I can partake of the communion like they are, so that I can become Orthodox? And then we ask the community, the people they are living with, we ask them for permission. Currently we have 25 orphans, total orphans that have completely nowhere to go, and they are living in the mission. We have the others, we have taken orphans, and then we can give to you 2 children to live with, and then we give the other. But we have 25 that they don't have any other place to call home apart from St. Barnabas Orphanage.
May I ask a private question?
Yes,
How
please.
did you become Orthodox?
Myself, wow. It was in the year 1993. And where I'm living, it is 100 kilometers from my parents' home. So in 1993, it happened one Sunday morning. I was very tired from a vigil that we had gone in another denomination with my parents and siblings. So that Sunday morning, I felt it was very far where I was supposed to go for Sunday service. And so I went to a nearby church, which happened to be a newly started Orthodox church. And after being there for the service that one day, I felt like I was home, and I never went back to the place that I used to go. And then later on,
But
after
you used to go to, you were what? What did
I
you...
was Protestant.
Oh, Protestant.
I was in a evangelical church called Full Gospel.
Okay.
Yes, after going there for one service, I felt like this was home, and I never went back to that other denomination. later on, I managed to convert my mother. I preached to my siblings, 3 of them, and they all converted to Orthodox. So we believe that even the place I am living at now, there is no other church there. They have never heard of Orthodox. They heard it from us, but now they know that this is Father Methodius, this is a priest, the Orthodox priest. They used to ask us, do you believe in Jesus? Is the Orthodox Church a Christian church, or is it a cult, or what is it? Because they had never heard of it. And most of these people have not gone to university. And in Kenya, you learn about other religious organizations, you learn about them in the university level. So people without university level of education, they know totally nothing about religion. Apart from wherever they have gone to church, they don't know. You ask them about the Catholic Church, they cannot tell you the difference apart from the services. They don't know. They think churches just pop up and start. So,
is the Metropolitan of Nairobi your superior?
Yes.
Is there a Metropolitan for all of Africa? Or
Just
just
the Patriarch of Alexandria.
Patriarch of Alexandria?
Yeah. Patriarch of Alexandria is overall for Africa, and we have now bishops. Yes, please.
Yes, can you talk about the what is available to prepare people? Obviously, you're teaching, but for seminary or study of theology to
Yes,
become priests?
in Nairobi we have a seminary, and that's where the priests are prepared to become priests. I went there for 3 years and studied my diploma in theology, and that's how I became a priest. Also, maybe I should bring to your life that we do not just sit down and think and look around and come up with an orphanage. That's not how it happens. For example, St. Barnabas, how was it started? I got married in 2006, and in 2007, after completion of my seminary studies, we settled in the place we are. And we were living on a 1-story building, rented a single room there, and that's where we were living. And one lunchtime, we were seated next to the window to have our lunch. And I was seated on the side of the window and my wife on the other side. So after praying, I started eating, and I realized she wasn't eating. And I observed her, and she was looking outside and then looking down, and she was feeling like she could throw up. And then I asked, what is wrong? She was expectant, so I asked her, you are having a problem? She pointed outside for me to look, and then I turned, and outside there was a garbage pit, and 2 boys were looking for food in that garbage, and so that was making her feel bad. With my little knowledge and maybe guidance from God, I thought, maybe if I get these children to come in here, wash their hands, she'll start feeling clean and get to it. So I went down, brought the boys in, and I told her to wash their hands, and she poured some water on their hands, and she gave them some food. And then when they sat outside our house to start eating, she felt well and she ate. Fortunately or unfortunately, these boys learned they could get some fresh food from our house. So the following day they came to our house directly. They got food. The other day they came. So they started. After 2 weeks, I noted my wife became too close to them, and she was allowing them to be in the house when there is nobody, and these were street kids. And they could pick something, and if they picked something, I had to take them to the police station, and that would not be what I want for them. So I discussed with her, and we looked for a school dropout of some kind, and then we looked for a house somewhere, and we told them, okay, don't come to the house, we are busy, but we should be meeting there with them. And then we told this girl to cook for them porridge in the morning, and then at lunchtime also to cook some rice for them, and they would eat, not knowing that they would bring others. So they came for like 3 days, and then the fourth day the girl called me and told me, Father, that by that time I was not Father, they used to call me John, so she called me and told me, John, here are so many kids, I have 13 kids now. They want to, what will I do? I told her, add some water to the porridge and provide it to them. And so from that time I started going to whatever place I could and ask for some help, some food stuff for these kids. And so then I realized, oh, this girl can take some books and start teaching them something. and so it started like now it is a school. After some times, I realized that these boys didn't have home. So I rented another room next to the one they were using and made it like a boarding facility. And so that became their home. Some of them I tried to get help from other institutions and I managed to place them somewhere, but I still have
What is
three.
the age? I'm sorry.
I was just going to
Yeah,
ask that.
that's where I'm going. Now currently they are 17, one is 17 years old, he's in secondary school, the other one is 16 and the third one is also 16, they are in secondary school. So those that we started with, they are now, for example, one of them is the one who was giving sermon this Sunday at church. So this is how we are going to grow the church. It is not my idea that I should have started this. So it's God working in us. Yes, please, there's another question so that I don't take much time.
Father, how did Orthodoxy come to Africa? And from where and by whom?
I hope you have some history about the African Orthodox Church in America. And possibly you know somebody called, what is Maguire something? Daniel William Alexander. So during the struggle for independence in Kenya, okay, I'm talking about the Orthodox Church in Kenya, because the Orthodox Church in Africa was brought by immigrants, Greek immigrants who came to Africa.
Ethiopia not too far away.
Yeah, that's another story. The Ethiopian story is another story. So the story I'm going to give is the Kenyan story, the East African story, that is. So in East Africa, what happened is during the struggle for independence, some Africans felt that they wanted a church that belonged to them. And so they formed groups and started praying together. And then when they were praying together, some of them happened to go to war and to these places, and they learned there was a church called African Orthodox Church in America. And so they wrote letters in 1920s. They wrote letters to America, and Daniel William Alexander traveled through South Africa and came to East Africa, and he ordained 2 priests. And then he went back. After some time in 1946, those people were ordained in 1946. Sometimes in 1956, the Cypriot bishop, that is Bishop Macarius of Cyprus, happened to pass through Kenya, and so he met these people. He met the people who are fighting for independence, and because he also was from exile in Seychelles, so he kind of found comfort in these people, and so they became friends. When Kenya got independence, that's when the Orthodox Church now got accepted to the Greek Church, that is the Greek Patriarchate of Alexandria. But in Africa as a whole, Saint Mark preached in Africa, and he's the one who started the church in the northern part of Africa.
The Apostle Mark.
Yeah, Apostle Mark. Yeah. Yes, please.
So, do we have African Orthodox Church here in Washington?
Well,
Like we have the Ethiopian Orthodox Church and
Paffhausen, John.
no, it's
or the Kenyan Orthodox Church.
but no, there are African Americans, but they go to just other, whatever churches there are, including this one.
Yeah. So I don't know, after he did what he did, that is Daniel William Alexander, I don't have the information about when he came back, whether the church was live, whether it is not live. That's just a little about how the church was started in Kenya. And these people, they later got reordained by the Greek church, and they were so that now we are under the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate of Alexandria. There's another, yes, please.
So why don't you share what's really needed now over in Africa and specifically in Kenya?
Okay, most of the times you talk to friends, like I'm talking to you, and then they feel like, oh, we have orphans, maybe I should send clothes, which is a wonderful idea. Maybe I should send some sweets, which is a wonderful idea. Maybe I should send some toys, which are very many here. That's a wonderful idea. But that's not what we want, because that will not lead us to get to self-sustaining. We want, we are requesting that people help us do these self-sustaining projects. So what is really required is, one, you should pray for us throughout, whether you have money, whether you don't have, whether you have, whether you don't have. You should know us and pray for us, and pray for us unceasingly, because we really need prayer partners, so that whatever we are doing, we don't do it for ourselves, but we do it for the glory of God. The other thing is, we need you to be our partners, and we need you to be our friends. So you need to go to the internet where we have placed the information and look for this information and know us. Try to know the children who are in these missions, try to know the priests, so that you don't talk about the Orthodox Church of people that you don't know. When I talk about the Patriarchate of Moscow, through the internet I have known Patriarch Kirill. I have known him. When I talk about the church in America, I have known Vladika, I have known Bishop Metropolitan Jonah and some other people through the internet. So get to know this information, so that when you are praying for us, you don't just pray for a vague idea, you pray for something you have seen. The other thing is, tell your friends about us, because you might not have all the time to pray. Sometimes you'll not be in this world, and we will still need prayers. Or I might not be in this world too, but there will be some other people in the world, not you, not me, and they will need to know each other. So tell your friends. Maybe your friends will be there when you are not there. And the other thing is, get something and give to these missions. $1 can take care of a child for a whole day. If you give $30, these $30 will take care of a child for 1 month. The other thing is, donate for the construction of these schools and missions. We have not only schools, we have a mission that wants to build a clinic. That will be a business for them. We have a mission that wants to build a water project. They will be bottling water and selling. So there are these schools that are going to be started, elementary schools, and we are also going to build a secondary school, because, for example, the children that are in secondary school, they're in a school that is not Orthodox, and they are being taught some other faith, because in Kenya the faith is taught in every church. In university, you go there and you are taught about Christianity. You go to primary school, it is taught. So if the institution belongs to the Pentecostals, then this faith is being taught to our children. And we have lost so many, not only in our mission, but in other churches, in other Orthodox churches that were started a long time. They bring up children, but after primary school, they go to some other denomination school, and they are taken from there. And you know how teenagers behave. They can change to anything, anytime. So we want to build, and we are praying to St. John Maximovich through his intercessions, that we are going to build St. John Maximovich Secondary School, where our teachers. Okay, in the schools right now we have people that we call teachers, because they are not trained, but they help these children to learn the languages, to learn about basic ideas and concepts in the school.
How many years in the school?
For example, St. Barnabas, we have 13. 13. They are like volunteers, because we are not able to pay them a good sum of money, and they are not trained, so they are just people who are holding these children and guiding them, but they are not.
Yeah, but how many grades do you have in the school?
Okay, up to now at St. Barnabas we have up to grade 8. After grade 8 they go to secondary school for 4 years.
From age 4 to from age 4 to what?
From age 4 to around age 14. Most of the, okay, there's no set age, because some children will go to school at a later age, others will go early. Those who have parents will go at an early stage. Others who don't have parents will be brought to us when they are very young, and you have to place them into the classes, because you cannot send them outside. Mm-hmm. So, but up to the age of 14, they're in primary school, and then they go to secondary school.
How big is Barnabas?
How big, as in, we have 175 children.
No, the city where you live. It's a village.
Oh, the city where we live is not a city. It is the countryside. But we have a small town that is not very big. It's just small in our standards.
Do you have good water there?
No.
You don't have water.
That's why we have water. We have water. That's what we have water, but we don't have clean water,
That's
which
what
is
I'm
piped.
talking about.
That's why we are draining water from the ground.
That's from so deep.
Yeah.
Yeah. They just drilled a well, and they call it a
I
borehole.
mean, they live there forever. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
we
not
have
yesterday
water
how
that is water that is creating problems for the children because it is contaminated, and that's why we are looking for clean water at the ground. We have pandos where we take water. We have rivers that are contaminated. We have all this. We have rainwater, which is also sometimes most contaminated, and that's why we want water that we can contain somewhere, clean it, treat it, and then we can use and also give to the community around the mission.
Yeah. What is the name of the town that Barnabas is in?
It is in Jambini,
Jambini.
a place called Githio.
Thank you.
Yeah. If you go to the internet, you find this. You can check out www.
Is it near Kisumu?
No, it's not near Kisumu. It is near a place called Naivasha.
Sure.
Yeah, Naivasha. I'll give you a card which has our website, and you can get most of these
What's
details.
Kinangop?
Kinangop is a Maasai name which I don't know what it means.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's just a place. But Kinangop also is a larger area it's a larger administrative area that we live in. It's a district. So we live in South Kinangop, Central Kenya. If you search on Google, you'll find South Kinangop, Central Kenya. The mission is at Jambini, Githio.
How is the situation with medicine there, with health care?
It is difficult because if you fall sick, you have to pay for your health services.
And you have doctors there? You have clinics
Clinical
there?
officers.
You have like malaria?
We have many diseases. We have many diseases, and by the grace of God, we don't have, these kids are not getting so sick, but if you go to the hospital, you find all people lined up there sick. Fortunately, our kids don't often fall sick. You get some cases, but you can imagine having 175 children and you are not in the hospital every day and you don't have the facilities required. It means miracles are happening.
Do you have healers?
Heaters?
Healers, people that treat. I mean, not officially.
You mean shamans?
Like shamans or whatever. I mean, healers.
Okay, we don't have.
No traditional medicine. You don't have anything like that.
Maybe herbs. We have some people who
I mean,
know about
where
herbs,
I
and you
was,
can
that's-
boil those herbs and drink. We have that.
That's where they.
Yeah.
go.
Myself, if you have a problem, I can go and get some herbs. If you have tonsils, I know what herb you can use, and we use them.
And how far are the clinics from you?
Okay, we have one that is not very far, but it doesn't have the facilities. The one that has facilities is like 65 kilometers from where we are. The one that have the good services, but it's also expensive. So the challenge we have is that everything that is required is available in Kenya, but it is not readily available. You have to buy. That's why we need to be self-sustaining, so that when a child falls sick, we can take them to the best hospital. We have very nice hospitals, but they are for the super rich. So if we could get somewhere between the super rich and the middle class, we can take the children there and get the facility, get the service artist.
How is the situation with electricity where you are and?
Okay, we have the power lines.
Okay.
And once we get there to build, we will install the electricity there. But we have power outages now and then. But because it is not only in our mission, it is the country, so we just cope. Yeah.
Do you have internet connection? I presume you do.
Yeah, we have, even though it is low, it is still at edge. We have internet. That's how we are accessing our Facebooks, social media, we have the internet, the website. That's how we are building it. But mostly if you are uploading maybe a video, you have to go like 50 kilometers to where you find 3G network, and then you can upload that video.
So on a final note, why don't you go ahead and just briefly explain what your responsibilities for Orthodox Africa are in Kenya and the surrounding areas in Kisumu and Uganda.
Okay, I'm working with Bishop Athanasius as my senior or guide to bring missions together so that we can have a coordinated development plan for all these missions. We are doing leadership training for the priests, and then we are doing leadership training for the laity so that they can own these projects, and once the priest is moved, the project does not collapse. So we are doing leadership training basically, and this after some time we have trained them for some time, and then we told them to write strategic plans, and each of these missions has written a 20-year strategic plan that they can be implemented with the current priest or with any other priest who comes to that mission. So this is basically what we are doing. Also, we are ensuring that we check all the accounts of these missions, such that whenever they receive donations, that donation is used for the specific goal that the donation came for, to ensure that there is accountability and responsible use of funds. So we don't want to let loose each mission to work on its own, because they might feel like they might develop the dependency problem, and then feel because we are receiving money, let us just eat the money. So we want a coordinated development. So each mission, whatever they receive from Orthodox Africa, we ensure that money is put in the right place. Like I've just explained to you, the money we received at St. Barnabas, the board saw to it that we bought land. We received another money and we drilled the well. Even if we have individual donors that donate sometimes directly to our missions, we ensure that whether it has come from Orthodox Africa, whether it has come from any other source, it is used in the proper manner.
And did you want to give them some information about your individual mission?
Yes, I would like to give them some information. Currently, we have the land, we have the well, we need a pump and pipes and to build a water tower, and we also need to build the castles. So I would appeal to you to pray for us. If you can come and visit and be with the children for some time, also see around Kenya, we would appreciate it very much. And if you can donate some money, either through Orthodox Africa and right there for St. Barnabas, it will come to us. Or you can send it directly to us through our website, and you will be accountable to Orthodox Africa, because the agreement we have with Orthodox Africa is they are going to give the opportunity. Like now I'm here through their courtesy, so we are going to be accountable to them. If we receive a donation, either directly or through them, we have to tell them we have this amount of donation, so that we become partners and they see that the goal is achieved. I know you know how to pray with the prayer rope, and so with the blessings of the bishop, I will give each one of you a prayer rope.
It's handmade.
It's handmade by the children of St. Barnabas, so that when you pray, you remember them, please. And you remember me. I'm married with 3 kids. Blessing is the elder son, 12 years. Christine is second born, 6 years. And Pantaleimon is 2 years old. So, with the blessings, yes.
Alright, let's go. You're talking here. So, I think this was a really inspiring presentation. And, it's wonderful work. So may God continue to bless. So we'll keep it short tonight because we've already had this wonderful presentation. But basically, I just want to kind of outline the the 7th and 8th centuries, or at least the 7th and getting into the 8th. They were very important years in the history of the Byzantine Empire. Started out with a great conflict between Byzantium and the Persian Empire, Emperor Heraclius. And there remained the task to try and reconcile the groups that had broken away after Chalcedon, not wishing to maintain, not wishing to accept the council and its theological decisions, because ultimately what it meant in their eyes was a betrayal of the traditional theology that they had been taught, because Chalcedon essentially had changed the meaning of the term nature or physis, whereas before it was you could use it in a kind of a general sense, or you could use it in a very specific sense. Whereas after Chalcedon, the Chalcedonian party, the Greek party, or the imperial party, basically understood nature to be related to the concept of essence, and that you couldn't really define, and that the term hypostasis could not really be understood in relation to nature, but had to be understood as a specific expression, concrete expression of as an individual. And so the word person, persona or prosopon, became associated with the concept of hypostasis. And so that was really the core argument of Chalcedon. Now, large parts of the church broke away. There were certainly political elements in that, ethnic communities that were tired of being under Roman domination, under Greek domination, Greek ethnic domination, that is. So, for example, the Copts in Egypt, the Syrians in Syria, the Armenians, and so forth. Then there were also the Ethiopians and the Malankar Indians, but each of those churches has a specific history. The Ethiopians were basically always dependent on the church in Egypt, so they basically followed the Egyptian church into schism, without really being a participant in the politics and in the councils of the Roman Empire. The church in India was just isolated.
You mean the Coptic church?
Yes.
They are similar to them?
The Ethiopian church actually was a kind of a daughter church for many centuries of the Coptic church. It has its own life, it has its own liturgical celebration, has its own language, but still there's been a close relationship. The church in India, it started out as a mission. Of course, the Apostle Thomas went there, and they were heavily supported in their mission from the 4th century onwards by the Syrian church, the Church of Antioch. However, that part of the Church of Antioch, which was supporting the church in India, became so-called Nestorian. And so the church in Kerala, in South India, started out Nestorian. Now, eventually they needed some more bishops, and they sent people to Damascus in order to get some more bishops. But they went to the wrong patriarchate, because you had three. You had the Greek Orthodox, or the Roman Orthodox, as it was called, is still called, the Syrian Church, which is the Monophysite, and the Church of the East, which is Nestorian. Well, so that without any kind of theological conviction, the Church of South India ended up transitioning, shall we say, I won't say converting, transitioning from the Monophysite to the Nestorian, or from the Nestorian to the Monophysite, and so has remained within the non-Chalcedonian family of Eastern, ancient Oriental churches now for a millennium. One of the attempts to reconcile the non-Chalcedonians was a theological innovation called monothelitism. There are two aspects of it: monoenergism, monothelitism. Monothelite means one will, that there would have been only one will in Christ. Monoenergist, only one energy in Christ. And the reasoning behind this was that there was only one subject in Christ, one person. And so there would only be one activity, which was both divine and human. However, what the critics of this began to say, no, what this does is it essentially subsumes the human into the divine, and it compromises the integrity of Christ's humanity. And so Maximus the Confessor, with his mentor Sophronius of Jerusalem, who later became patriarch, began a resistance against the monothelite and monoenergist movement, and they got into all sorts of problems because this theological movement, this theological innovation, was not only supported by almost all the patriarchs, including at one point the Pope, but it had imperial support, and it was working. And various non-Chalcedonian communities were returning to the imperial church, to the communion of the imperial church. Now, this was up through the 630s or thereabouts. There were some interesting kinds of theological questions that went along with this monoenergism, monothelitism, and some of which went back to, say, Justinian. Of course, the schism was already 100 years old the time Justinian was building St. Catherine's in Mount Sinai or Hagia Sophia, and so now it was 150 years old, and so some of these became kind of very old, familiar doctrines. And one of them was the idea of aphthartodocetism. A-P-H-T-H-A-R-T-O-D-O-C-E.
Too fast.
A-P-H-T-H, aphtharto, A-P-H-T-H-A-R-T-O, docetism, D-O-C-E-T-I-S-M. You remember docetism from the New Testament, right? That's where Christ only appeared to be human. Well, aphthartodocetism is the idea, or is the doctrine, that Christ only appeared to suffer. Now, if you remember, or only appeared to be corruptible. Aphtharto is the prefix meaning corruption, to suffer corruption. And if you remember back to the Council of Chalcedon, what was one of the major slogans that was a kind of signpost of orthodoxy? God suffered in the flesh. God suffered in the flesh. It's called the Theopastite formula. And why is it necessary to say that God suffered in the flesh? because who Jesus Christ is the incarnate Son of God. And so who suffered is the person of the Son of God in his humanity. So in Aphthartodocetism, it was actually a kind of a piety gone awry, in which it was asserted that Jesus did not naturally suffer, or he didn't naturally feel pain. He didn't naturally experience any kind of the corruption of the fallen world, but he had to consciously will to do it. Okay. Now, on one hand, it's very central in our tradition that we say that Christ had to will to die. That he willed to die. His passion was voluntary. He voluntarily accepted not only humanity, he voluntarily accepted pain and suffering and death. Okay, that's kosher. That's Orthodox. But what's not Orthodox in Aphthartodocetism is that they were saying that on each particular occasion, Jesus had to realize, oh, I should be feeling hungry. And therefore I can feel hungry now. Oh, I should be bleeding. And therefore I can bleed. I should be dying now. Therefore I should die. It's kind of weird.
When did he actually realize that he's going to die? Or he knew it from the...
Well, I'm sure he realized that from the time of his baptism that was his path.
Death sentence.
Right? But I'm sure on the cross he realized that.
And the cross, of course.
Yes.
No, I was thinking of before that.
Yeah.
He knew he would die.
But what?
Or he didn't.
Right. Well, yeah, he knew that he would die, but I'm sure it only became obvious and immediate right before he died, and at his death, we would say, is the natural process of this world, right? And you abuse a body, so you can only abuse a body so much before it dies. And so his body was so horrifically abused that finally he died. And it's not that he had to choose to die. It's that he accepted it to die. Mm-hmm. And there's a big difference there. Now there's another theologumenon, which means a theological opinion. It's a question, and there's a new book out, a relatively new book from some Greek theologian. Was Christ's nature fallen or unfallen? In other words, did he take on human nature from as it was in Adam before the fall, or did he take on fallen human nature? Now this is actually a really important question when you really get into it, because it brings up the question is, what is human nature, and what is the nature of the fall, and what is Adam's nature before the fall, and all of these important questions. Well, I think if you're an Aphthartodocetist, you would definitely say that Jesus' human nature was unfallen, right? He had to choose to experience pain and death, consciously and rationally. But if you're a Chalcedonian, In other words, if you're Orthodox, what are you going to say? Was his nature fallen or unfallen? And what does it mean? What does fallen nature mean? Because on one layer in our tradition, which is very important, the whole essence of the idea of fallenness is all tied in with the idea of mortality. It's not like the West where you're dealing with this idea of inherited sin. Okay? We reject the idea of inherited sin. We're only guilty for our own sins. But the reality is that we all sin like Adam. And that's what the book of Romans says. We all sin in the likeness of Adam. And therefore, the entire environment around us is a sinful environment. Now, if you take Augustinian theology to its logical conclusions, and then you take the Calvinist variant of it, which takes it to beyond logical conclusions, shall we say, which I don't like. I don't like Calvin. You come up with the idea that fallen human beings are utterly depraved. In other words, human beings are born evil and unable to do good. Born evil and unable to do good. And that it takes a special act, this is the Augustinian element, of prevenient grace. In other words, God makes a special act of grace to allow a person to make a decision to do the good, like to convert. Okay. The Calvinist issue is a huge issue, and that's not for tonight. But that's where Western theology went, and it became very, very problematic. But it's also important to know that kind of theology shaped our entire cultural understanding and all of our cultural presuppositions if you speak English and if you're dealing with theology in English. You can't escape Augustinian presuppositions and even Calvinist presuppositions, especially if you're American. The Brits, they also have Calvinist problems, but they're not quite as the debate wasn't as intense there as it was over here. So, what is fallen human nature? And so I would submit, and this is my own theologumenon, and I may be a heretic. There's no such thing as fallen human nature. Because there's no such thing as a nature. Right? There are only persons, hypostases. Right? And only a person can fall. Now, human nature has, and the way we understand nature in Orthodox theology is that it's not a concrete existence. It's rather a dynamic potential that needs to be actualized. It's like the image of God is in a sense our nature, human nature, that needs to be actualized towards likeness by our action, by the activity of synergizing our will, our energy, with the divine energy. Because at the heart of each person, of each being, is, at the heart of each being is the logos of human nature, and a particular logos from the logos. In other words, we're words of the word. And that contains the potential of what we are able to become as human beings. And we see in Jesus the ultimate fulfillment of what human nature is and of what human nature has. We see the ultimate fulfillment.
Nature or person?
Both. Both. But we see the ultimate fulfillment of that humanity in the resurrected Christ, who is enthroned at the right hand of God, fully, radically deified and co-reigning with the Father and the Spirit in his flesh, in his humanity. His humanity has the potential, our humanity has the potential for immortality. But it also has the potential for mortality. Right? Obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Can we say that Jesus was a fallen human person? No. Because Jesus was not a human person in that sense. He was not a human hypostasis. He was the divine hypostasis who took on the fullness of human nature and who expressed that human nature as a unique individual, the incarnate Son of God. But Jesus is not a human person in that sense.
So that is here sample for us, an example.
Well, he's an example. He's a type. He's a symbol. He's all of these things. He's a sacrament. He's the but he is the archetype of humanity, of the human person. Now, if I would assert that only a person can be fallen, because it's not, and the nature has this potential both for immortality as well as mortality. We see both actualized in the God-man Jesus Christ, right? Because he died and he rose again. So this question, was Jesus's humanity fallen nature or unfallen nature, is a wrong question.
So can you ask the question in another way? Is he falling person or unfalling person?
And we would say he's the divine person of the Logos.
So you cannot answer that question. I mean, he's not a person again.
He's not a human person.
He's not a nature, he's not a person.
Well, he has human nature.
Jesus Christ.
Well, yeah. Well, that's the ultimate
That's the question.
Whom do you say that I am? He asked. But you see, it's a very important issue. It's a very important question. If you're going to be dealing with all of these questions around who is he, right? And how do we understand his humanity in relationship to our humanity? So, this is a little snapshot of what people were talking about around the year 620. Now, St. Maximus stood up against the emperor, he stood up against the patriarchs, he stood up against the Pope, and as a result he got his hand cut off and his tongue cut out. and died in exile for resisting the Monothelite heresy. And they actually just found his grave, his relics, in Georgia, and opened his tomb. So it's right near New Athos in Abkhazia, actually. So right near the place where St. John Chrysostom died. So it was a busy time theologically in Byzantium. They were trying to reconcile the non-Chalcedonians. There was a measure of success, but then you had these spoilers get in there and bring in, theological points which they couldn't ignore. Maximus would be vindicated in the Third Ecumenical Council of Constantinople in the year 680, 50 years after he died. But in the meantime, things were also popping in Arabia. And this is 610 through the 630s is when Muhammad was going through his period of, shall we say, supposedly revelation with the angel of whatever kind, supposedly Gabriel, who dictated allegedly the Quran. And so by the time, and it's quite interesting, the whole history. The Quran is a very different kind of book than the Christian scriptures. On one hand, it quotes a lot. On the other hand, it misquotes a lot. But allegedly, it was dictated by God. Now, it was kind of hard to have it dictated to a man who was illiterate. And so he had scribes write down what he told them the angel had told him from memory. There are also a number of different phases in the development of the Quran. At first, it was very kind of Irenic and religious, and then by the end, it's very warlike.
It's very what?
Warlike. And there's a principle that often doesn't get mentioned, that the later passages abnegate the earlier passages. So the earlier passages say, "Oh, be nice to the Jews and the Christians, the people of the book, and honor them," and so forth.
There's no compulsion in religion.
No compulsion in religion, and so on and so forth. But then the later passages say, "Kill them all." And so it's actually the later passages that have authority, and not the early ones. Islam grew up as a very, very complex entity, and at its heart is Sharia. Islam is only partly a religion. It's basically the outline of how to operate a warlord's kingdom, essentially. And Sharia is the law of that kingdom. So it has laws which govern every aspect of life and every aspect of behavior. Some of which we would find resonant, with, and others of which we would find abhorrent. So obviously, as Christians, we would rather reject that it was the angel Gabriel that dictated the Quran.
Fallen angel?
Well, that's the implication. But it's important to understand that Sharia goes hand in hand with Islam. You cannot separate the two. Islam is not just a religion; it's a whole, integral, socio-cultural, political entity. And so, in a sense, Islam is another, and especially as it evolved into a caliphate, which means a single religious, social religious entity under the authority of a caliph, who is a kind of like an emperor, essentially, a religious emperor. It evolved as a parallel to the Roman Empire. And both as Roman Catholicism and Orthodoxy, Orthodox Christianity, each in their own way became heirs of the Roman Empire. So Islam, also the Islamic Caliphate, also was a kind of a third variation on the Roman Empire. And indeed, the Islamic Caliphate, by the 8th century, went all the way from Spain to India. They conquered most of the Roman Empire, into the Persian Empire, all the way to the Indus River. And it was not like there were vast hordes of Arabs. They would go in. The populations were given 3 choices: 1, convert; 2, die; 3, you can pay. And so those people who were wealthy enough were able to pay a tax called the jizya to maintain their ancestral religion. So, for example, in Egypt, the Copts were always the upper class, economically, and they were the ones who, for now the past 1,400 years, have had the money to pay the jizya, and they accepted to live in dhimitude. A dhimitude is the state of being one of these protected minorities, religious minorities. Later on, with the fall of Constantinople, incidentally, today marks the anniversary of the fall of Constantinople in 1453. Later on, the Caliphate developed an institution called the Millet, in which they put the Patriarch of Constantinople as the head over all the churches in the Caliphate. And so all the Christians in the Islamic Caliphate looked to him for their leadership and administration. Of course, that meant the relativization of all the local churches within that. So that's had lasting effects on the Orthodox Church, aside from the bitter persecution. So there's really not much difference between what ISIS was doing and what Muhammad was doing. The ISIS people are being faithful to their prophet, head chopping and all, and it was brutal. Of course, within what 70 years of the death of Muhammad, almost the entire southern half of the Roman Empire was gone and under Islamic control. Now, it's also interesting that Islam is a Christian heresy, and it comes out of heretical Christianity. it's kind of a combination between Nestorianism, Arianism, and and God only knows what else.
They had some. There were some Jewish tribes there and teachers and preachers. So Muhammad or the people around him absorbed some of their ideas, but they transformed them.
Right.
And some of those might have been heretical within Judaism.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was
variations on stories.
He followed the Christian guy at the beginning. I mean, and his wife was.
His wife was a Christian. His father-in-law was a Nestorian bishop.
So
but then it became more and more brutal, and and it's said that in the Kaaba, in that which is the temple, ancient temple in the middle of Mecca, that there used to be filled with pagan idols, but that there were two icons also, one of Christ and one of the Mother of God. And Muhammad had all the pagan idols removed, but he left the icons, which is interesting, and which were later taken away. But so there's it's worth studying. It's worth looking at and understanding. On a social, cultural, political level, it radically transformed the Middle East. The Christian population was reduced to dimitude. That the simple people all basically converted, but there were also millions, literally millions of martyrs. I saw a figure yesterday that Islam has martyred 560 million people in the past 1,400 years.
That's complicated to count.
If you can imagine.
But
they always had records.
Spain was in Spain. The Jewish people were not maltreated by the Arabs when they were there. And the interesting part is that Spain is Christian. There is not. I mean, I don't know how many Muslims there is there.
Well, now
maybe now, but I think
right. But in the 8th century, Spain was conquered by Islam, by the Muslims.
It was conquered, but it didn't stay.
No, because there was a bloody war in order to eject the Muslims, and they got all the way into France, and and so they were pushed out of France, and then it was only Ferdinand and Isabella, just before the Columbus, who finally expelled the Muslims from Spain. So I mean, there's a lot of popular.
But there is a lot of places where they are staying until now. I mean, North Africa, for instance, is still Muslim.
It is, but because the West was never able to reconquer the area. The Roman Empire was never able to reconquer and roll back Islam. The one area where Islam has been rolled back, well, it was in far Western Europe, in France and Spain, in southern Italy and Sicily, it was rolled back, and then eventually, it's important to remember this: Islam conquered all the way to the Danube. So all the Balkans were under Islamic rule. Serbia, Croatia, the Austrian border was the border with the Islamic world. Not to mention Romania, Greece, Bulgaria, parts of Ukraine, and then of course Turkey, Asia Minor, Greece, and Asia Minor is still under Islamic domination. And all of those, and those were all Christian, thoroughly Christian areas.
But they were civilized at that time, better than in the Middle East, in Europe. They had medicine, they had a lot of science that were at the high level.
So were the Aztecs. The Aztecs looked at the Europeans as
far away.
Yeah, but the Aztec civilization was much higher than anything.
Maya too.
In Europe, they looked at the Europeans as filthy barbarians, and they were. But you know, but it's also important to remember too that you know, there's this, you know, politically correct kind of idea of Islam that's being taught. You know, oh, they're a nice, peaceful religion. You know, who suffered at the hands of those nasty crusaders, those evil Christians who set out to.
There is a truth in this.
That's right.
The Crusaders were not angels at all.
They weren't. On the other hand, the Crusades were called to try and roll back some of the Islamic conquests because the Muslim army, the Muslims, were bitterly persecuting the Christian minorities that were left in the Middle East, and they were not permitting the.
They didn't really succeed.
Who?
The Crusader.
They did for a while, for about 200 or 300 years, but it was a disaster.
Yes,
The whole thing was a disaster. But the first disaster was that the Byzantines were stupid to have exiled the heretics to Arabia. If they hadn't done that, if they just sent missionaries, they would have done much better.
Right.
So it was a brutal time, and the Islamic armies, you know, they seized Jerusalem, they seized Damascus, they seized Antioch, they seized, of course, Alexandria, Egypt, Cairo, all the way over, and basically eclipsed Christian civilization in the Middle East. Ethiopia was essentially cut off from Christendom because there was this great Islamic gulf between the Roman Empire and Ethiopia, which is quite a ways south, you know, so the church in India was also cut off, essentially. What's interesting, one of the things that's interesting, is that at the same time, you had massive missionary efforts going out from the Nestorian Church. I hate to call it Nestorian, but it's the ancient, the Church of the East, which were going all through South Asia, and they got all the way to China. There was a metropolitan see in Lhasa, in Tibet. There was a metropolitan see in Kabul, Afghanistan. All of those areas were heavily Christian, and the Tang dynasty in China not only accepted that Christianity be preached, but there was a period of time when it itself had accepted Christianity. It was called the Luminous religion, and it went all throughout East Asia as well. So you know, very remarkable missionary efforts on the part of the Church of the East. And one of the advantages that the Church of the East had, because it largely grew up, its headquarters, as it were, remained in Antioch or Damascus, but for the most part, it was a church within the Persian Empire, but it was never a state church. In the Roman Empire, it was part of the state church. but you cross the border into the Persian Empire, which for the most part was at war with the Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire. And it was an entirely different relationship between church and state. Basically, the Christians were tolerated within the Persian Empire, and they used the structures of the empire in order to propagate Christianity. So one of the things that when you had an enemy takeover of the state, as happened with Islam in the Middle East, persecution of the church was also an effort to wipe out the old political culture, because the church had been so tied in with the state. Whereas in the East, the church was not tied in with the state. So the church was able to live in much greater freedom. So that when Islam swept into and swept across Southern Asia, the church remained to a large extent intact. Yes, of course, they lost people because of forced conversions, but many of the communities remained intact and did up until the 20th century, or actually until the 21st century. In China, they were wiped out in the 13th century as an invading Western religion, along with Buddhism. And so then you had the development of a syncretic religion, a combination between Buddhism and Christianity called Pure Land Buddhism, which is very interesting. You know, there's Kuan Yin, you know, this icon of the Virgin Mother with child, and you know, all sorts of, and the idea of the Buddha as the savior. Of course, why not understand? You can also understand Buddha, the enlightened one, as Christ. You know, so how that syncretism happened would be a fascinating study. But that was in China, in Japan, to some degree in Southeast Asia, and I think into Korea as well.
Well, I know they were in Indonesia.
In Indonesia,
in some capacity.
Yeah. Yeah. So pretty amazing. So that's basically the 7th century. A pretty eventful period. And moving into the 8th century, towards the end of the 7th century, in the year 680, there was an ecumenical council called, which finished off the concept of monothelitism, monoenergism. It was condemned, and then there was between that and the previous council, there was a meeting called the Quinisext Council, in which vast amounts of canon law were formulated, and that's still with us.
Where did they meet?
I don't know. I'm in Constantinople.
Why is it called Quinisext?
It's between the 5th and the 6th.
Yeah, Quin is 5, 6.
It's the 5th, 6th council. Between the 5 and 6.
The 5th, 6th council. Oh, okay. Is that what they call themselves?
I don't know what they call themselves, but that's what they're called.
Anymore.
That's what they're called in history. In history books. So, it was at that council, and next week we'll take a look at the material that came from that council. But this was right on the eve of the outbreak of iconoclasm, which would dominate the 8th and the 9th centuries. Iconoclasm started in 723, and it wasn't really finished off until 840. And this also saw the development of, saw some of the greatest fathers of the church. St. John of Damascus, for example, right at this time. St. Theodore the Studite, one of the greatest of the monastic fathers. Then you had Photius and all these other people. It was a very interesting period. So, especially the dawn of the 9th century, and then with what was going on in the West at the time, which was also tied in with the pushing back against Islam and the ascendancy of the Franks, and Charlemagne switching his allegiance, or Charlemagne essentially claiming to be the Roman Emperor, and the Pope switching his allegiance on Christmas of the year 800 from the Roman Empire of Constantinople to Aachen. So anyway, what time is it? It's time. So, questions? Does this make sense? Kind of roll together?
So
it's a very complex period.
History makes sense.
So if you had to characterize the church, it was, we talk about the separation between the Catholic and the Orthodox, but that came much later, but
right.
There were already schisms.
There were already, and it seems like there were always, issues going on between Rome and Constantinople, and between the various patriarchates.
But they didn't deny that each other were Christians, or they wouldn't say something like, "Oh, if you received communion in the Ethiopian church or the Armenian, you didn't really receive communion. That's fake. That's not a real priesthood." Kind of some of the things I hear more. Today,
I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. Some of them yes, some of them no. It depends on the group.
Oh, in terms of what they would say about each other.
That was told about the communion during the Soviet era, that it was not real.
Yeah.
Because it was done by people that were not faithful anymore.
Yeah. The imperial policy in regards to the Monothelites, using monothelitism as the reconciliation. The idea was to just get the Monophysites to come to communion in the imperial church, not to be rebaptized, not chrismated, just come to communion.
That's what Jesus Christ said. Come.
Yeah. But there's other issues that are
There's always issues.
Okay? Alright. Oh, please keep my mother in your prayers.
She's in the hospital right now.
Yeah, she's still in Zealand. It is truly meet to bless thee, Theotokos, ever blessed and most pure, and the mother of our God, more honorable than the cherubim, more glorious beyond compared to the seraphim, who without corruption gave us birth to God the Word. True Theotokos, we magnify thee. The blessing of the Lord be upon thee through his grace and love for mankind, always now and to ages of ages.
Amen.
God bless you.